Hello, everybody. I am here joined by.
Hello, I'm RamenRook.
So, we are here together. We're going to be making a map tier list for 3v3s. So, there's a few metrics we want to go over. The first thing we should say is what makes a good map in the first place? So, good maps will be large maps. Generally, they're on the larger side and they have a good amount of cover. Because if they're too open, then it's very easy to spot where people on the map, and that can sometimes be really snowbally or make missiles really strong, for example. And then respawns as well. The respawns need to be kind of like in that balance where they're not too far away from each other and also not too close to each other. Because if they're too far, then you can't really regroup with your team, and that's really annoying. And if you're too close, then you're just gonna spawn right on top of someone, and you're just gonna get bodied for it. Also, another thing, and I think Ramen will 100% agree on this. The spawns need to not be in direct line of sight because it's very easy to see where you are in that case. And the team with spawn advantage will get a very easy snowball because of that. We should also mention, I cannot English for some reason, that this is a combination of both pub stomp lobbies and coordinated scrims. That's going to be the main focus of this. Mostly coordinated scrims because that's where people are actually playing to win and trying to do that. But a lot of the maps haven't been tournament legal. And so we're going to be going off of like fun factor as well for a lot of these maps. Because there are a lot of maps I do think that are not necessarily terrible for tournament, but are just like not fun to play on, you know? Alright, I think that's everything. Also, just a variety of playstyles available would also be nice. I don't want one map to be dominated by just one singular playstyle, whether that be divers or missiles or whatnot, or, you know. Having some maps having a certain playstyle favored is fine, as long as it's not too overwhelmingly in that favor, in my opinion. I think that's everything. Shall we jump into it, Ramen, or do you have anything else to add?
I think you covered it.
All right, awesome. So let's go over the tournament legals maps first, the ones that have been played. That actually is going to be all of these. So let's start with Xylem. What do you think about Xylem?
Xylem is definitely best by test for the map so far. There's a reason why in the majority of threes tournaments it's the most picked map. It's quite big with a large cover density, and the different sections of the map all provide different aspects of play that can be quite interesting.
I think that's the cover is really important to specify for this one because there are maps that are big, but they don't have good cover, and that can really be awkward to play for some builds that like having enclosed areas. Having that balance where you have the mid area is really nice. We got what we call jungle, which is where all the buildings are right by the skyscraper. That's also a nice area to play around and is very different from how mid plays. And the spawns are more or less pretty balanced too. For the most part, it's not the easiest map to get a snowball going on. In fact, I think that's what makes it really nice and why it's always been picked as sort of like the tournament standard. There was a point where some tournaments, it was literally you're only allowed to pick that map on game one. And I don't mean that like in a way like it's the only good map. Like there was a literal rule set where every game one will start on Xylem, which kind of is a testament to how balanced the map is overall and how many playstyles it enables. So I think off of that, I think we kind of have to just put in a tournament acceptable, right? There's no like, there's nowhere
It's the
else we can
top
put
of the
it.
tournament acceptable.
Yeah, it's
It's
the
like the
tried and
gold
true.
standard.
Yeah, it's basically what every threes map should set out to be, I think. All right, let's move on to City B. City B, there's nothing inherently horrible about it, but I do know there's some issues, without a doubt.
It's a quite a large map with not a lot of cover. It's very favored towards missile heavy comps and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think the map is good. And it's okay in tournaments. It's probably one of the better tournament maps.
I personally like playing on it a lot, but it is a bit of a snowbally map, especially for a big one, because you can very easily determine where someone spawns on the map since it's so open. You can kind of just like see them without ever even needing to scan in a lot of situations. So it can be definitely on the snowbally side because of that. But I do think it's open without being too open like some other maps, in my opinion. There's still, there's still the parking lot. There's still prison area. There is that middle house that can be used a little bit, but it's definitely still obviously on the open side. I think it's definitely better than most of the maps on here. I'm kind of tempted to put in tournament acceptable. What do you think? I'm like,
Yeah, I think that's fair.
yeah, just like based on like everything else on here, like it's not a perfect map. There's issues with it, but overall, it is. There's something wrong with it in terms of tournament level. I think, in
I
spite
agree.
of the small gripes I have with it. All right, I actually want to talk about Grid 86 real quickly. This is the biggest tragedy of a map when it comes to 3v3s. All right,
Absolutely.
so I guess a lot of people don't know this because this is classified information. It's not classified. I'm joking, but it's information that's not known to many. So this map has a bit of a history. In singles, it was banned pretty quickly because you could rat on it really easily. There were a lot of hiding spots and whatnot. But in threes, it was considered to be one of the fan favorites. It was my favorite threes map because of how much variety of gameplay can be put on it. It is slightly favored towards like boat builds, I will say, but overall, the amount of cover you have with the pillar, the amount of rat angles, while still being a pretty open map, having pretty fair spawns, like it was kind of just like Xylem part. It wasn't like Xylem, but it has a lot of the qualities that make Xylem a good map in a different slant. The pit was nice. It made some interesting things. Is what I want to say. If it weren't for one thing that ruins the map, and why don't you explain it, Ramen?
The pressure is on. So the it has to do with how points are scored, and it's roughly about a 10-point bonus if you get the last hit on a player. So whoever like confirms will gain a 10-point bonus for themselves. And if you fall in the pit, you essentially deny that 10 points.
Yes.
They don't go to anyone.
Yeah, so basically, a kill approximately is about 108 points ish, excluding MVP bonus. And if you fall off, which the community likes calling Michiganing, it's about like 90 to 99 points, and it has enabled some interesting strategies to say the least, because as many people will know and will always say, terminal armor is incredibly important for high level 3v3s, and you can use that terminal armor time to either get some value on the map, or you could do this map where you just go to the pit and deny them points. And I've had several games in scrims be decided because of how many Michigans were pulled off. Which is not cool. And because of that, I freaking hate playing on this map. And I think we all do now.
It seems a lot of people, especially in the West, have the same kind of group of feeling about this one. But we spoke to some of the Eastern players, like in Japan, and they say that while strange, it's a level of element that adds complexity. Which
Yeah.
is, I guess it comes down to more of a mindset of how you feel about it. Personally, I'm of the opinion that it's an unfun play style, which is why I don't really like it. But if you
Yeah.
kind of look at it as a deeper layer, then I can see where some people might like it.
Like I understand like more variety in terms of depth and uniqueness of the map is definitely not to be overstated because of that whole mechanic. But the issue is when that mechanic isn't fun to deal with, it kind of just ruins the map in my opinion. I am fine to put it in flawed but decent. If it was more personal, I think I would probably put in too many issues because it's really not fun. But do you think flawed would be a good spot for it? Because the map itself, besides that, is
I think
like,
flawed is okay.
yeah, because
There's the issues that it has in 1v1 aren't as apparent as it is in 3v3.
yeah,
And I think like some of the like rat routes are still like good and viable in 3v3, which make it a decent map because
it
if you
helps.
Michigan and you're like at 50 or more percent AP, it's still really bad.
Yeah, and the thing about
But
it is like even though that strategy is a real thing, it's not the end all be all strategy. There is still the means to use your terminal armor to play for kills and play for points. Like that is not completely dead from this. There you just have the alternate option of choosing to deny points, and that's another thing I don't like about this map is because it's pit centralized. It can almost bring an RNG angle to it, because if you get termed by the pit or you play around the pit, then you have a better opportunity to get the Michigan point denial while still giving value on the map, as opposed to if you were like, terms like on the other side of the map where the ramp is, for example. Other than that, though, like the map is still really good. The amount of rat angles you can like use really helped offset an otherwise open map, and I think the amount of the playstyles it enables is some of the most fun I've had in playing 3v3s. It's just at top level, it has issues for sure. All right, moving on. Let's talk about dunes. What do you think about this map? I don't
I actually
know.
really like this map.
Yeah,
Personally, I'm a big fan
I won't
of
lie.
Bonadea Dunes A.
I think I like it a lot too. I feel like these three are like the standard at this point. There is the issue that is a little open, but the thing is, there's a lot of variance between the ground, and there
Yeah,
are a lot of shelters by the edges of the map, which is really helpful for spawns because it means you can wait out and hide from the enemy team while waiting for your team to get the opportunity to regroup with you. Um,
the crater in the center adds a very like interesting kind of terrain to play around with, and it does help
yeah,
a lot with your
Crater's really
spawns.
cool. It's like a double-edged sword, Crater, a bit, because it's an area where you can get a lot of AoE shots in, like ear shots and whatnot, but it also makes you equally as acceptable to them. You can obviously use it for cover as well at the start of the game, whereas the other side have Shell. Shell is also kind of interesting because that also kind of plays like a double-edged sword, and why I think cover is so important for 3v3s, because on one hand, you can use it to redline and get yourself safe because they can't pelt you with missiles or Zimmermans. But on the other hand, if they have an AoE weapon like a near shot, an LCD, or a Fasan, and you're in there, you're fucking dead. You're gonna get staggered immediately. And that I think that's like an interesting dynamic to the shell and a lot of maps that have cover in general that I hope to see more in future maps.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, I think tournament acceptable is perfect for it. Now, Spaceport. This map is weird because there's nothing really wrong with it, but I don't really like playing on it at the same time.
It's a strange one, that's for certain. It doesn't have any like exceptional strengths or interesting features, but at the same time, it doesn't have a lot of like bad flaws.
So the main draw to this map, I think, is the spaceships make missiles considerably weaker because you can either go underneath or behind the spaceship, and basically missiles are obsolete. On the other hand, as well, AOE weapons are really strong in this map too because there are such big structures. So earshots like underneath the spaceship is basically guaranteed to hit anyone that's there. For example, and it does make an interesting sort of like rat playstyle. The routes you can take around the ships are pretty fun. It's just a weird map, but I kind
Yeah,
of
I was
like.
gonna say this map favors like lighter ACs more than it favors heavier ones because
Yeah,
of the variety of the routes you can take to stay evasive.
I agree. Simultaneously, though, skybox builds also are a little weird because if you have a team of primarily like skybox people, like like missile boats or LCD boats, or like there's a lot of those airborne missile rats in on ranked, for example. Those guys can't really get any value if you just stay underneath the spaceship. So I think it's actually like there's really not much wrong with the map. I can really say the spawns are fine. It's just a weird like it's just not what I'm used to in a threes map, I guess.
I think this one for me is tournament acceptable.
I honestly, yeah, I was like under the mindset I might put it in flawed, but there's not really any flaws to it. It's just
It's a decent map. I wouldn't say there's any major flaws,
like it's
so I
unpopular.
think it's
It's very rarely played in tournament, and in fact, it was taken out of the legal map pool for a while because of that. But that's not really because the map is bad. It's just kind of because people are not used to playing on it because it's by far the most different out of the tournament standards. I think.
agreed. Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to Jorgen. So, the smallest map of the legals at the current moment. And that is kind of the issue with it, actually, is because it's the smallest one. What do you think, Ramen?
I'm thinking a solid flawed but decent.
I think so too. Obviously, it being small, the smallest one can enable playstyles on its own. I think heavier builds are nice on it because, they don't have to chase as far. But at the same time, like, missile builds that want to get away can really struggle. There are cover on the outside, they have the rat hole and that stuff, but at the same time, it's just not
Right.
enough. Also, the spawns are really not good on this map, I will say. There are worse maps with spawns, but it's still not great, I will say. Um, yeah, I don't have too much to say about this one. It's the smallest of the bunch. You can oftentimes get spawn cycled because of the way the spawns are. Like, a lot of them... There was, like, a spawn that's, like, right by the ramp area, and it's like, you're in the middle of the goddamn map. Why would I spawn there? You know? Like, what's the point? Like, Xylem has that too with mid, but at least that map is, like, actually big, so that's fine. I think if the spawns were, like, on the other side of the map and that's it, it wouldn't be too bad. And, like, away in cover. But because of the way the spawns are located and everything, I do think Flawed but Decent is, like, a perfect spot for it. Do we want to order the tier list? I feel like we might as well. So
Yeah,
I'll put
starting with tournament, yeah, I'd agree with this layout
yeah.
for tournament as
I
well.
think this is perfect. I think I like Grid more than Jorgen still, personally, but I could understand why
Mm,
someone would put Jorgen above.
I think it's okay to leave grid there for now.
Here? Like here?
Correct.
Yeah, it's just... Even though the Michigan stuff is lame, like, the amount of times I've been betrayed by a bad spawn on this map is really annoying. And granted, like, obviously, it's twofold because it's going to affect the enemy team as well, but, like, that doesn't mean it's fun. That doesn't mean it's, like, actual good game design. And it really shows that, like, this game mode would be so much better if the spawns were just better. Alright, let's talk about the spicy one, Let's talk about Grid 12B.
Grid 12B.
There's a handful of people who really like this map. There's also a handful of people who hate this map. As far as casual, I think it's a really fun map, but actual scrims on it are a nightmare.
I
And
put this in the trash tier personally.
I would say I can compromise it with... If this was before the Michigan stuff, I would be fine to compromise into too many issues. Because I do think the map layout is interesting. It's just the issue with it is the spawns. They are horrible. Because the only place you can spawn is on the main platform. So you are immediately in either under attack or able to pounce on someone who has no idea where you were. And that's just... It's brutal. It can be so brutal because of that. If you're the last person alive and, like, an enemy spawns right on top of you, like, there's literally nothing you can do. You're just dead.
Isn't there
So
also a bug at the ceiling?
that is a good point too. I should also mention that. I don't really know what triggers it, but once in a while in 3v3s, you will also get just infinite flight for no reason, and that's actually the main reason why it had to be banned. Not because of the spawns or the layout or anything like that. People were really liked it for that. I think the layout is cool. The spawns suck, obviously, but
People also liked it for the pit factor.
the pit factor is fun too. But then we found out that
But now,
Michigan's.
yeah,
Then we
now
found
that
out.
we have the information
Uh,
on Michigan's.
yeah, so I think I'm gonna put it in the trash tier because of that. Combined with everything else, I think I'm fine putting it there. Casually, it's still a fun map, of course. You got a lot of the variances. I also think it's a really limiting map because if you can, the only builds that are good on it are the super AB centric ones. Granted, threes has always been about like AB centric ones. There aren't that many builds that are good with like neutral boosting whatnot. But this map really punishes neutral boost builds like really hard. It's almost unplayable for them because they don't have the capacity to AB away like everyone else does. I think you would know how that feels, Ramen, considering what you play. Yes.
Yeah,
All right. Dunes B. This was temporarily added after Grid 12 and Space Force were removed from the map pool. I don't know what to think about this map. I haven't played a serious game in it since like before ranked. I'll be real.
I have to agree. It's kind of unexplored in the modern uh, competitive threes environment.
Because in a lot of ways, I think it's just Dunes A, but slightly worse. Because there's not as
That's
much
how I
cover.
feel exactly.
Yeah, there's not as much cover. The spawns are, I feel like, at times a little bit more unfair. And the cover like is more centralized towards the edges, which is not a bad thing. But when you don't have anything really to save you in the very middle, it's just like, yeah, I don't think it's very good. So I think Flawed but decent is a fine compromise. The very bottom of it, just because it's very unexplored and we don't really know what to think about it. But I mean, I'm willing to scrim on it more. I do think it's a little bit too similar to Dunes A to really be having both of them in the map pool, and I'll always pick A over B in how I feel right now. But there's nothing wrong with it overall. Like, nothing terribly deal breaking.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I think it's a good way to put it. So let's move on to Wall. We haven't scrimmed on this map since before ranked because
For good reason.
nobody likes it. But I will say I don't think it's trash tier. I genuinely
No.
don't think it's trash tier. Some people think it's
I
the
think
worst
this is
map
our
in the
first,
game. I think this is.
might be our first too many issues.
I think so too. So the issue with this map, actually let's start with the goods. It is a big map. Now, there's a solid argument that it's too big, but at least it's a big map. There's also a lot of cover, which makes for both interesting playstyles because it makes missile builds a little bit weaker because the skybox in this map is enormous. It also enables AoE things, which are interesting and fun, and also, like, weaving through cover is a lot of fun. The issue, however, is because it is too big, the spawns are really, really far apart, and it has the other extreme of maps like Jorgen and Grid, where it takes like 3 business days to get to the rest of your team.
Yes,
And
I have to agree.
I would be willing to scrim out with it more, given that the metagame for threes has changed a lot since before ranked. No question about it. Everyone has gone faster. I would say people have gotten less tanky. The time to kill is a lot faster than it was before ranked. But as it stands, I will say it's definitely a problematic map. Now, City A. I've never scrimmed on this map, but I have played some pretty high-level open lobbies on it before. Have you played on this map before, Ramen?
I have not.
Okay, so I would say this would be up here if it was literally like 30% bigger. Because the size of it is very clearly geared towards ones. And I gotta say, like, if it weren't for that, it'd be a really good map, but it's tiny. The spawns are really bad because of that. You can literally like spawn in front of so many people like at all times. So I don't think it's trashed here because there's some shit here that's definitely going in there. I think Too Many Issues is a good spot for it. Definitely below Wall, but I don't hate it.
Okay, I trust you on that.
All right. Have you played on Grid 12? Let's go on the maps that you've gone over. Any of these you played? We did some scrims on this before, haven't we? On Watchpoint A.
I don't think so. I played LOC Station and Ranked, and I've done casuals on Lower Grid.
Let's talk about Lock then. I guess. Let's talk about Lock. So this map, nobody likes it unless you're a unless you're a cosplayer. I feel like people hate it in singles, and more or less people feel the same way with it in threes. The issue with it is it's very big, but it's also very open. Like, the little pillars do nothing to help you, like, at all.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know? Do you have anything to add to that? Because otherwise, I feel like it's just a trash tier map.
I feel like there's some interesting cover play possible, especially in 1v1, because it has the those like bus stops is what some people like to call them.
Oh, like the...
Cover.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. I do like that. That is one thing I like about it. If I could muster a positive about it. If it was,
I'm
like...
not sure of its applications in 3v3, though.
It's okay. It does help, but it's not enough. If there was, like, more of that, it would be a decent map, but there just isn't. Alright. Let's go to Grid 12. Let's do this one, because this is my guilty pleasure. It's not a good map. It's definitely going in the Too Many Issues tier, but it is very fun to play on. The issue with it is that round start, you guys are literally right next to each other. You and the enemy team.
That's really funny.
So whoever has earshots have a huge advantage on this map because of that. You know, they just immediately jump up and earshot the enemy team and get a near guaranteed splash damage on them. Sometimes even a full stagger. Now, other than that, I do think it's a very varied map. And a lot of people have noticed, like, actually the terrain, while ratty, is very interesting in ones.
I definitely agree.
Yeah, like, there's a lot of places to hide. There's a lot of, like, areas you can play around. And those kind of things, because you don't have to worry about, like, playing for time like rat builds and stuff like that in threes necessarily, because it's all about killing the enemy team and getting points off of that. It makes for a really interesting gameplay, I will say, and I do think if the round start was better and the spawns were a little bit more fair as well, like if they were more on the end of each map, which it's not really the case, I think it would be a really interesting tournament map. But as it stands, it's got too many issues. We're gonna put it in there. All right, moving on. Let's talk about Grade 86A. What do you gotta say about this one?
The cage match
Yeah,
with orange color palette.
true. It's kind of the same thing with it in ones. It's literally just like Hell in the Cell Armored Core, you know? Let's
Yeah, I like it in 3v3 for casual play, but I don't like it in competitive play.
I more or less feel the same way. It also has the same issue with Grid 12, where round start, you can just earshot the enemy team immediately. Not as close to each other, but it's still a thing. I think this is a good spot, though. What would you say? Maybe?
Yeah, I think so.
Because it's not horrible, I will say. There is still areas you can hide around, which isn't terrible. But it is still too small, overall. Especially because there's just a road with no cover. And that can really throw you off. Alright, Wale, I don't think we need to talk about this. This is just a flat map. you know?
Very interesting.
It's just a flat map
Okay.
with a Juggernaut in the middle. I mean, I'll say the Juggernaut is fun to play around. And that is fun, but it's not even that big either. Like, even if you spawn on the other side of the map, like, they can, like, get to you pretty easily.
Yeah, it is deceptively small.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know, like, there's just no reason to really play it when there's other maps that exist. Alright, speaking of no reason to exist, we can agree that this is the worst map for threes, right?
Watchpoint Delta B is like LOC Station, just rainy.
This is LOC without anything that makes LOC slightly better. There's no, what was it called? Tickets in lock, you called it?
Bus stop.
Bus stop, that's what it's called. I've never heard that term, which is, I'm going to steal that now, it's pretty funny. There's literally nothing, it's just a flat map. I'd say it's a lot of fun if you're doing wheelchair only play until someone brings a demon blade and just ruins the lobby. But other than that, like, there's no reason to play on it. It's the same thing with the ones, like, it's just, there's no cover means absolutely no interesting gameplay to be had. Alright, Watchpoint A. Have you played on this map before at all? Or...
No, not in 3v3.
So, I will say, I like this map a lot in ones. I don't know about you, I think it's a really good map in ones.
It is my favorite 1v1s map.
I think it's up there for me too. I think it's either that or City A. The bridge is very interesting, and I would say a lot of the things that make Delta a good map in singles mostly translates to it is in threes. The lack of cover, however, is an issue because if I remember correctly, unless I'm wrong, all of the spawns are in the water, and that is out in the open. So if you lose the first fight, you kind of lose the game because of that. Because they can just see where you are and then spawn cycle you. It's the same thing with like, wall and whatnot. So it's definitely not trash. I wouldn't say it in trash tier. I think this is good. I think that's good. Maybe here.
I was gonna say probably better than the cage match.
Alright, and now let's continue ordering. I feel like, honestly, I don't have too many quarrels about this. Wall could have an argument to go lower, but compared to the shit here, like, I still would rather play Wall.
I think Wall is okay there because it still had tournament application.
Yeah.
The other maps like just never did.
Now, granted, it was short-lived. It was banned a day before the tournament happened. You remember that? When Dirk was like, alright, nobody likes this map, we're gonna ban this literally like a day before it, despite everyone practicing on it, and nobody minded because no one likes it. I will say, though, it is still better than all the maps below it, and it's not horrible. It's not great.
Remember when we tried to lab callouts for the Wall?
That's another thing we should mention about it. Everywhere in this map looks the exact frickin' same. And you know how hard it is to make positional callouts when everywhere on the map looks the same? So, like, Xylem, that has a lot of buildings that look different from each other, You You got the oval looking building where Alpha spawns. We call that heli. You got the tall one. We call that tower or skyscraper. You got the buildings right by it. You know, jungle. You got triple. You got mid. You know this? Okay, we got one place with buildings and we got one place with buildings. Have fun discerning which one is which. You know? And then we tried like determining by like the right side of the wall means like you're at this side of it or some shit like that, and it was just it didn't work. The only consistent call out was just mid. And Belgium used to have the issue with that. I know Coolish, for some reason, wanted to name them A, B, and C, and you know that obviously doesn't get confusing at all. Sarcasm. But the way we made it, we had a field and dish, I believe, right?
Yes, and then mid, and then
Yeah,
we comboed it with the front and the back of the ship.
yeah, like back dish, back field, and that was really nice and consistent because field is where the road is. So the ship by the road is field, and the one by all the buildings, that one's dish, and that actually made it really easy to determine where everyone was, especially since if you're on one side of it, the chances you're able to see the other person that's also by it is really high. You don't really need super specific callouts for that map, so I will say that's nice. Other than that, I think this is good. So I guess the takeaways from all of this before we sign off for the day is that three's maps need to be better. I do hope FromSoft does consider this game mode in the future when it comes to balancing. I do think we will eventually get another balance patch, even if it's not like right away. I mean, this game just did too well to abandon it that fast. I also think FromSoft didn't expect the PvP to go this well. Like, it's not obviously like some high level, you know, like Overwatch shit, but there's still like more amount of players than probably any other like FromSoft PvP besides Elden Ring, and that's just Elden Ring. So I just hope they consider like at least giving quality of life changes to some of the weaker maps so they could be played realistically in a tournament setting. You know, maps like Jorgen just needs to change the spawns, and it's literally like perfectly fine in tournament acceptable. Is there any? What are some maps? Actually, we have time. We can talk about other stuff that are also related to it. What maps would you like to see in Armored Core 6 for 3v3s?
What exactly do you mean? Like, from where are we pulling the maps from?
Not necessarily has to be from the game, just sort of like ideas. Because right now with the current meta, it's very high TTK and like, or very low TTK, I should say, sorry. Very high damage. And it's very diver skewed currently, combined with like, you know, the LCD boat and shit. What would you say be like a helpful map to kind of like maybe skew away from that, or at least enable alternate playstyles?
There's the map where you fight the dam complex, right? Where you
Oh,
fight Nightfall and like Chartreuse and Keenan.
yeah, yeah.
I think that would be interesting, actually.
I think I agree. Especially if it's a big map, because then you can include the building area as well, which is also nice. You got the dam,
I
which
think
could be really interesting.
also the contaminated city, like not City A, but like the area before City A,
Oh, like the
where it's like Xylem, but like the buildings
yeah,
are just
yeah,
not
yeah.
full.
I think I know what you're talking about. That could be a good one. I feel like the tester AC area, not the tester, sorry. When you, what's the
Oh,
mission?
you're right.
Yeah, like
It's like
the
the grid
Yamcha.
82 cleanup or something.
Yeah, the Yamcha guy. Oh, that one. I wasn't talking about that one. I'm talking about the one where you fight.
Oh, the tester AC.
Yeah, because maybe not so much the area itself, but on the left side of it, there's a lot of like buildings and whatnot. That could be interesting. I think. What about the Ibis map? Not the part where you fight Ibis, but before that, with like the buildings and shit. That could be interesting. I think. It'd be a.
Yeah, that could be interesting.
The thing is, like, there's not a lot of ground on it, but it's also very elevated. So I feel like it'd be a great option for like builds that need to find a way to like play in the air or like playing in the air, because I can always just use the buildings to like land on. I think that would be a pretty cool one. But I don't got anything else to say. I think the tier list looks good to me. Hope y'all are doing well, and appreciate y'all who come out to watch these videos. And thank you, Ramen, for sticking by and helping me out with this. Thank you for your input.
Thanks for inviting me.
We're gonna be doing more content together. Spoilers, I guess. We'll do more like scripted videos and whatnot. Hopefully, like a full-on 3v3s guide will eventually come out. But as it stands, have a good one, y'all. Bye bye.